All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast. Today, me and Nick here will be doing our 2025 preview and prediction for the Texas Longhorns. Looking at the staff, Steve Sarkisian, 2 straight 12-plus win seasons under his lead. Kyle Flood, 5th year on staff, will be the offensive coordinator. And then Johnny Nansen, Pete Kwiatkowski will be splitting the defensive coordinator duties. Great offseason, hauling in the top-ranked high school class. And then 26 in the portal. 2024 was a successful season, I guess you could say, in terms of 13-3 mark, but they lost to Georgia twice and then came up short against Ohio State in the semifinal, going with those 3 losses. Getting things started with this Texas offense, Nick. This was a relatively good unit last year, but I think it was kind of underwhelming as we never really saw them surpass that ceiling that was set. Quinn Ewers on the stat sheet had a good year, almost 3,500 yards, 31 touchdowns. He did have 12 picks, though, and throughout the year, his passing attack just seemed, I wouldn't say lifeless, but it just seemed like they were not going to surpass the cap that they were at. And you've seen that throughout numerous games, against Arkansas, Kentucky, Texas A&M. A 3-game stretch there at the end of the year where they were just unimpressive. Against Florida, though, it was a banged-up team, but they put on a clinic. And they played Georgia twice, and there wasn't much to show for in that one either. This passing attack you're hoping can reach new highs, though, as Arch Manning's going to finally step into a starting role. This is a guy on tape last year in a couple of appearances who showcased impressive athletic ability, above average rushing skills. That was the talk for a while, as his highlight reel of being able to run the football compared to what his family members have accomplished in the past on the ground. He showed the ability to be a nice crossbody thrower, has a nice high release. That's clearly something his family's worked on a lot, Nick. His release is incredibly beautiful. I think he throws a great deep ball as well with velocity. Shows good calm feet, a good eternal clock, I thought, and he also showcased impressive diagnosis on those RPOs. Did have 4 fumbles, and I also wonder how will his calmness translate to some tough road environments, because that's not something we got to see last year. We're going to find out very early as week 1 they play at Ohio State. What's your expectation for Arch Manning this year?
Out goes Quinn Ewers, in comes Arch Manning. This is a very high-profile player. Obviously, you don't need me to tell you that, plugging into this offense. Last year, like you said, and I do agree with this, the offense looked like it reached a cap, and Quinn Ewers was unable to elevate the offense any further. He had a great season, right? Despite some injuries here and there, 3,400 yards passing, 31 touchdowns is really strong numbers. The 12 picks was obviously a bit of a concern and a bit of a letdown by his expectation. And obviously he's probably disappointed with the fact that he ended up getting drafted late in the NFL draft in the 7th round. Didn't quite work out for Quinn Ewers as well as he would hope. I hope he figures it out now that he's in the pros. But now you hand the reins over to Arch Manning, one of the most hyped players in college football history, right? This is a guy that's got so much hype since the beginning. And, I've always been a fan of him. I've always thought that the film stood out to me in high school ball in New Orleans. I know people said he played low-level high school, but he played 2A in state of Louisiana. People talked about, he wasn't playing strong competition. I don't want to, believe any of that. I think he is a player that is so talented, and the natural upside, natural ability shows. 6'4", 225, but he can move. He can really accelerate on the field. You saw him in packages last year on 4th down where they had him running the ball. He was really effective on the ground over and over again. I think you'll see the legs a lot in the offense this year. I think you'll find a way to get that involved. The accuracy, I think, was really solid in the limited reps. I look at the game against Mississippi State where he was phenomenal, right? 83% comp rate, 325 yards passing, and 2 scores. Just really good numbers there, plus a rushing touchdown to boot. Really impressive numbers. I thought he looked pretty solid against some other weaker opponents as well, in limited reps against UTSA and Colorado State. I think he looked good in those 2 games as well, especially against UTSA with the 4 touchdowns on just 12 attempts. Pretty solid touchdown rate, if I do say so myself. This is a kid that I think has all the upside in the world. It's certainly a trial by fire jumping in Columbus, playing in a very hostile environment against Ohio State because those fans are going to be quite loud. But I think this is something you can kind of condition for. You're going to work on it. Obviously, you can't replicate the full in-game experience until you go out there and do it. But I think this kid's got enough of a head on his shoulders to go in there, step into the gauntlet fire, and really not play that bad of a game. We'll see how he does throughout the entire season, but I certainly think he can contend for the Heisman and be one of the best quarterbacks in the nation.
Now let's go look at some of his pass catchers. Last year they dipped heavily into the portal. 2 of the top 3 leading receivers were portal additions, and Matthew Golden was down the stretch tremendous for them. They didn't go to the portal as heavy here. The only 2 guys they got were late in the cycle, and Emmett Mosley and Jack Andrews. Mosley mostly worked out of the slot for Stanford, showed good focus and hands, had 3 drops in a game last year, only 1 outside of that. Showed good burst and run after catch and nice ability to make a variety of tough catches. A 6'2", 190. I like his ability, as a pass catcher. As a freshman, he certainly got a lot of work to do and improvement. Ryan Wingo, of course, he was a high-end 5-star in last year's class. He's going to be the top dog here in his 2nd season. Great speed allows him to be dangerous in terms of run after catch. Was lethal on end arounds. a phenomenal playmaker for them. He had 4 drops as well, had plenty of games where he just wasn't involved as well for this offense. Needs to keep refining his ability to get open. He's 6'2", 210. The rest of this group, DeAndre Moore, he's going to step into a larger role. His production overall was good, but had way too many mistakes throughout the year, and essentially he had 3 100-yard games, so he was very quiet most of the year after that. Of course, you have a group of young, inexperienced talents. Aaron Butler, a guy with good physicality, quickness, and long speed. Parker Livingstone is a 3-star in last year's class. Incoming 5-star Kalik Lockett has great ball skills, nice speed, impressive cuts out of his breaks, has versatility to play outside or in the slot. Jamie French was a top 50 prospect. Good vertical threat at 6'1", 190, strong at the catch point. They also have 2 more top 100 recruits in Michael Terry and Daylon McCutcheon. Lots of talent that's going to be in the fold here, Nick. And of course, I want to talk about Jack Endries real quick. 6'4", 240, has great hands. He caught 92% of his targets for Cal last year. Good route running. He's a dependable pass catcher, athletic 4-star. And Jordan Washington's going to back him up. He could be used as a vertical threat. Good group here in terms of upside. There's no real veteran presence, Nick. Your top dog is a second-year guy in Ryan Wingo. That's going to be also concerning. Again, week 1 against Ohio State. It's not going to make or break the season by any means, but this inexperience here could be deadly because they do have some very tough road games in conference.
Very youthful, wide receiving core, and that's certainly something that's going to have a lot of growing pains, and you'll probably see some drops and some mistakes up there in Columbus week 1. There's, no way to overstate that and sugarcoat it, right? They're going to have some struggles early on. This is a young unit, but this is a unit with so much upside. I'm going to talk about Mosley quickly. The ad out of the portal from Stanford was very impressive him last year, right? I thought he had a lot of high upside potential shown at Stanford. 6'2", 190. I think he's a really talented player, really solid size. 525 and 6 scores for him on 48 grabs. Not bad at all. He had 13 receptions against Louisville in a game that was a shootout. They ended up winning that one, and 3 touchdowns in that one. Just a really phenomenal showing in that game. Also had 7 touchdowns against San Jose State, or 7 receptions, that is, and 1 touchdown against San Jose State. So some decent numbers for him. A really talented asset that I think could really be solid for this team. A solid portal ad. When you look at the guys they return, obviously Wingo is a guy that they really think can step up and be a big star for this team, and I think there's a lot of reasons to believe that to be the case. 475 for him, receiving 16.3 yards per grab and 2 scores. Really good numbers there. DeAndre Moore, a lot of his catches and touchdowns were concentrated in a couple games, but he's still a very talented player that has a lot to provide for this team. 456 for him, 11.7 yards per catch and 7 scores on the season. So a lot of nice production that he can certainly work with. I think Parker Livingstone is an underrated player that will certainly develop at that wide receiver Z position and be really solid. Aaron Butler will be solid for this team as well, looking to take a step forward. It's a very young group, right? So there's going to be some growing pains. Texas fans certainly have to be patient with this group. There'll be some drops early on, but I think if Arch can put the ball in the right spot, some of these guys will grow up and start making plays for him throughout the season.
Now you look at a very deep backfield as well. For what was a successful running game for Texas last season, they had 158 yards per game, very complimentary. 2 duds against Georgia, 29 and 31 yards respectively, certainly lowered that. And they weren't as good in the last 2 games of the college football playoff, but they exploded against Clemson for 292 and 4 touchdowns, showcasing the versatility this offense brings to the table. Quintravion Wiesner, 1,064 yards, 5 touchdowns rushing. Has nice run after catch, does a good job making a decision late in terms of what lane to run through. Shows nice burst at the second level. Good contact runner, sheds guys who cling to his lower half. Plenty of help in the pass-catching department, like I alluded to. You also have C.J. Baxter, coming off a torn ACL as an X5 star. Good elusiveness. I like the vision. Used on a lot of counter runs 2 years ago. Good usage in the pass game as well. 6'1", 218. He's just a complete pain to tackle. And then they also have one of the top-ranked recruits in last year's class in Jarrett Gibson. He got on the field a good bit. I like the way he used leverage of his blocks, cut runs back inside frequently. Christian Clark's a powerful 210-pound runner. He was a 3-star in last year's recruiting cycle. Got no playing time, but he does provide depth. Also got 2 more guys in the oncoming class. I mean, this is an incredibly deep backfield for the Horns, Nick. I'd certainly like to see them be more effective against some of the tougher opponents because everyone talked about the Arizona State game, and they thought that they were going to run all over them, and they did absolutely nothing, Nick. That was a very shocking and disappointing performance, a game they won, but barely.
A very stocked backfield here that has a lot of talented players that are really solid. And it's not even mentioning Arch, who we talked about his legs when we did the talk about the quarterbacks. We previewed the quarterbacks. Arch's legs will certainly be involved in this offense this year and will sort of take away from some of that, predictability with the running backs and allowed a little more balance for this offense. Trey Wisner, obviously returning a 1,000-yard rusher, is always good for your team. 5 touchdowns last year, 71 yards per game, 4.7 yards per attempt. Great numbers for him. Jarrett Gibson was solid in his reps last year, 375, 4.8, and 4 scores for about 25 yards per game. I think he's a really solid back, and he's going to be your number 3 back because TJ Baxter's going to be back, and hopefully he can play up to full strength and potential coming off that ACL injury, which obviously is a very tough thing to come back from. But he's been rehabbing. He should hopefully get some good looks and be solid to go here. This is a great backfield, right? This is a backfield that's so talented, really deep, a lot of high upside players here. You can spread the wealth over and over again. I'm expecting a very dominant season from this running back room that is really deep here.
The big reason why Arizona State made that so close is they couldn't close the game out by running the ball. It just wasn't evident that afternoon there. Look at the offensive line. This was one of the top units in college football last year, but now they have to revamp this unit. Trevor Goolsby was quite good in relief numerous times last year, both tackle spots. Looks like he's going to be that full-time starting left tackle. Neto Imezulu at 6'4", 330. He's likely going to be the starting left guard. Enters his 4th year in the program. He was a former top 200 ranked recruit. Cole Hudson, he's a veteran of the program, in line to start at center. Has primarily played right guard in his career. He's always been a bit of an average player. He's 6'5", 310, though. I think he's going to offer a great presence in the middle. DJ Campbell, he's the only returning starter up front from last fall, 6'3", 330. At that right guard spot, has improved in pass pro, but still has his inconsistencies. It looks like right tackle is going to be occupied by Blake Baker, 44th ranked player in last year's class. Long arms, good IQ. I like the way he moves his feet. Phenomenal size, of course. Maybe some growing pains due to all the turnover up front, but lots of talent for Texas. Across the board, Nick, what do you think? Because a lot of youth is screaming on this unit, but everyone has a nice high school recruiting profile, so I think they're going to blend well together.
A lot of youth, but a lot of high upside youth. I think there's a lot of talented pieces on this offensive line. Cole Hudson being your more senior veteran player. He's been around the program for a while. DJ Campbell's been around the program for a while as well. So I trust what they have at center. I think these are 2 solid guys here. I think Brandon Barker is a guy you want to keep an eye on at right tackle. Maybe you're a little concerned about him. Trevor Goolsby looked good when he played in his reps. Going to be solid at that left tackle position. I think you plug him in there and be just fine. As a whole, though, this is a very young and inexperienced offense. They're going to have some growing pains. I've said that a couple times. But I think they'll finally put all the pieces together as season goes on. They'll get better as the season goes on and march themselves towards a playoff spot, which you want to get hot at the right time. I think you have a younger unit here. They might have some hiccups and some mistakes early on. It won't cost them, maybe outside of a loss at Ohio State, but the schedule shouldn't, cause any sort of due hiccups in the early part of the season. Let this unit get comfortable. Let this unit figure it out as they approach the rest of the season.
Looking at the verdict for this offense, most would agree that Texas disappointed on this side of the ball last season, and now an elite abundance of talent departs, and they're back to step 1. But they have a great running back room, plenty of upside at receiver, and an offensive line that has great size and talent. And of course, this unit is going to be occupied by a very young quarterback in Arch Manning, who might just be the saving grace overall. Very good potential. I'll take a more of a modest approach, and that's by giving them an A-, which, if that's modest, that's still pretty good at the end of the day. They only returned 3 starters, Nick, so I think this unit is in great hands. I think there's lots of potential, but obviously, again, they have some big-time contests, so we're going on the road. I think could really start to see some issues for them.
Sky-high potential with this offense. This is an offense that's loaded with talent, but they've yet to really play a lot of games together. This is a unit that's not returning a whole lot of starters. I think I said it before, right? You'll have some mistakes early on, and it certainly may cost them in the game in Columbus. It may cost them to put them into some closer games than people expect against some of these subpar opponents in their early part of their schedule. But I think once they put this all together, this offense will be firing on all cylinders. It'll be a very effective unit. I think will score certainly more than 33 points per game this upcoming season. I think they'll be a top 20 unit in every single category we have listed in the key 4 categories down there on the stat sheet. This is a unit that I love what they have here. I think Arch Manning is the real deal. I'm excited to see what Arch can do. I like this offensive line. These guys, I think they can step up. They build solid tackles here and solid interior offensive line pieces down in Austin. I think they'll be just fine. The running back room is incredibly solid, and I think the wide receiving room, that's your biggest question mark. Is this pass catching group up to standard? I think they'll find a way to come around by the end of the season.
Now I move to the defensive side of the ball, a group that was phenomenal for this team 1 year ago, third in terms of points per game, yards, top 15 and everything across the board. They picked up 6 guys in the portal, and in terms of recruiting, they had 4 top 40 guys coming out of high school, so the talent is incredibly deep here as they returned 6 starters. And it starts with defensive end Colin Simmons. He was as good as you would have hoped for as a true freshman, was disruptive off the edge, showcasing good quickness, nice burst, allowed him to be effective on stunts. Shows a nice dip, gets Leonard to the quarterback with ease, nice chase down ability, and reaction to the run game at 6'3", 245. They went to the portal for some reinforcements on the interior. Cole Brevard, He's a big body from Purdue coming off his best season for them, 6'3", 333. Travis Shaw, he didn't do much at UNC, 6'5", 330. He's an ex-5-star. I think he's certainly going to benefit from some good coaching here. Kanu Hero didn't play much at Ohio State. He's 6'5", 300 plus. He was a 4-star out of the state of California. Has some twitch and a good motor. Some of the other guys they end up returning from in the program, Alex January, a 3-star in last year's class, should see a good amount of time. He and Melvin Hills, both second-year players at 300 plus pounds. Levon Johnson, a veteran from Maryland at 311. They got here late. And, of course, they added numerous freshmen, led by 5-star Justice Terry, who is an elite athlete with great power. They also got another guy, Murad Wilson, coming over from Syracuse, Nick, a big gap clogger at 6'3", 313. He was a strong run defender, good tackler in the hole for the Orange. I mean, this is as loaded as you get, and it's been like this for a couple of years. Even when Texas was bad, we were pointing out how good they were against the run, and now it's finally come full circle, Nick, as they are elite against the run, and it's not going to be any different this year.
They are certainly a lead against the run. This is a unit that's really strong, a lot of key high upside players. You look at the two guys they returned that had meaningful snaps last year. Colin Simmons, 48 total tackles, 14 tackles for loss, 9 sacks, a pick, 2 pass breakups. Really good numbers there. Ethan Burke, he's still, continue to develop and work on his pass rushing maneuvers. 27 total tackles, 9 tackles for loss, 2 sacks for him, plus a pick that he took for a touchdown, and 4 pass breakups. Really good numbers there. When I look at the rest of these guys, some of the guys out of the portal here, I think Cole Brevard is a guy that's absolutely waiting to break out and be a star. He looked good in spurts last year for Purdue, and previously was at Penn State, so got some good coaching there. Last year had 19 total tackles, 5.5 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks. Also had some decent stats the year prior. So this is a guy that I think you can kind of build something out of him. 6'3", about 330 pounds. He's a huge, big body in that interior. I think Travis Shaw was a really solid add who could certainly add a lot for this team. Alex January has a lot of high upside, and Hero Keanu is not a bad add either. They have a bunch of 5-stars and 4-stars further than the depth chart as well. This pass rushing unit is going to be just as dominant as last year, even if it is replacing some key pieces.
Yeah, Ethan Burke really hasn't shown that development into a star like he showed early on, but he had a tackle for loss in 5 straight games that end the year, has length, and he's been a good run defender at times. Colton Vasek, a 4-star in class of 23, 6'5", active run defender with that length. Great chase down speed, as well as a developed pass rush plan. Zena Omazilu, a top 250 prospect in last year's class, didn't get on the field. You have Lance Jackson, the 3rd-ranked edge in this incoming class, might get on the field as well. They have Trey Moore, who we're going to talk about in a minute, who's moving to inside linebacker. If the edge group struggles, Nick, they can shoot him back down to coming off the edge as a pass rusher. So like you said, this is going to be a dominant defensive line across the board. Do you have any concerns with this edge group, though?
No, an embarrassment of riches here, right? I think if you need to move more back to that edge side there and put him on the defensive line where he showed a lot of, promise and prowess at his previous stops and during his time so far at Texas, I think he can do so. We've seen more play solid at UCLA when he was coming off the edge, play solid at linebacker as well. So I think you can get a lot out of Moore if you need to. I think playing him at linebacker is just fine here. I think Ethan Burke's going to have a big year. I think Burke's going to step up and really reach those high heights that he's expected to reach so far. And I don't think they're going to worry about this edge rushing group at all. I think Burke will have a really good season and negate all those worries.
Looking over the middle of this 4-2-5, Anthony Hill, great athlete, top-notch playmaker. He had a pick and 4 forced fumbles. Good change of direction. I like his diagnosis skills. Showcases nice speed at 6'3", 235. Really impressive as a QB spy. I think he covers the middle of the field quite well in zone. Fires downhill as a pass rusher. Good overall strength. As expected, he was one of the top defenders in America, and that's going to continue. The aforementioned Trey Moore, kicking inside due to his well-established stature. 6'3", 245. Has nice speed and quick hips. Could help from a coverage standpoint. I think that him moving to inside linebacker is going to be very interesting, Nick, especially that versatility. He could have a great season when it comes to stuff in the stat sheet. Leona Lafeu played much better down the stretch, but he was still a liability in coverage and was poor in the college football playoff games. Brad Spence was a pretty good run stopper for Arkansas. I like what he's going to bring to the table in a backup role. Anthony Smith, athletic backer, might be used as a blitzer. If he added on some good strength this offseason, could find the way onto the field as a run stopper. I think this is a great group here. I'm very excited for what the tandem of Hill and Moore could do. If Moore translates to linebacker very well, Nick, nobody's going to be able to really do anything on this defense.
I think Moore can translate to linebacker well. This is a kid that's so talented. We've seen a lot out of him, and he's a very versatile player and had a really solid season last year coming off on the defensive line. Now you're going to play him at linebacker. I think you can get a lot more out of him. 35 total tackles, 10 tackles for loss, 5.5 sacks for him, plus a pass breakup. Anthony Hill, your top returning tackler from this team last year, 113 total tackles, 17 tackles for loss, a really impressive number there. 8 sacks as well. Led the team in tackles for loss, second on the team in sacks. Really good numbers there. 1 pick for him last year, plus the 4 forced fumbles. Stat sheet stuff for the type of player that I absolutely love at linebacker, a great leader for your team. Deanna Lafau as well is really solid, 63 total tackles, 5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, a pick, and 2 pass breakups. Depth. There's so much depth here, so many talented pieces. These are 3 incredible players, and we're not even highlighting Brad Spencer, they added out of the portal, who could certainly be interesting for this unit as well. A guy that had some solid reps at Arkansas in the past, had about 54 total tackles last year, 6 sacks. Maybe he'll get involved as a rotational piece. Love this linebacking core, one of the best in the nation and the conference.
Now you look at a Texas secondary that was flat out elite last year, gave up only 9 touchdowns compared to 22 interceptions they hauled in. And I know they didn't play the most staggering passing attacks on a weekly basis. They had exactly 1 interception, though, from October 19th all the way until early January, Nick, in the games they played. So, this secondary had great playmaking across the board. I know Clemson, they struggled in that game. Arizona State was able to put up some yards on them. And, of course, Ohio State, I thought they handled that passing attack quite well, as Jeremiah Smith really didn't do anything. I'll pull up those numbers in a second. Looking at this group, though, Malik Muhammad enters his second year as a starter. He's been very sturdy, wasn't as strong in coverage last year compared to his freshman campaign, but also saw significantly more snaps. I think he'll be an all-SEC corner. Jalen Gillibu has spent 3 years in the slot, but he's going to be moving over to outside cornerback. Remember, Jedi Barron did the same thing last year, and he thrived. He won the Thorpe Award as the top corner of the country. Kobe Black should be at the top backup. He was the 60th ranked prospect in last year's class. Considered a fluid mover, good suddenness, has ball skills and body control, could be a real star for them. Warren Robertson enters his 3rd year in the program. He was a 4-star safety out of high school. Really hasn't played that much for him. You have Santana Wilson, a redshirt freshman, lots of speed. Of course, he's the son of Adrian Wilson. Cornerback depth, not ideal one bit, but I think the starting group's going to be just fine, Nick. I'm very intrigued to see what Gillibu can do moving from the slot to corner, because, again, that's exactly what Jedi Barron did. Played the slot for most of his career, went to outside corner, and he was elite.
Very interesting move for Gillibu playing, moving him from the slot to outside corner there. I like the move for him. I think he'll be really solid for this team. They're going to play him and really get a lot more out of him. I think this is a guy that's got a lot of high upside last year, 58 total tackles, 6 sacks for loss, a sack, and 3 pass breakups. Michael Tiafi was really solid for this team as well. 78 total tackles, 6 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, 2 picks, and 10 pass breakups. A really good blanket coverage, athlete. Malik Muhammad was really good in coverage as well. 36 total tackles, a tackle for loss, and 8 pass breakups for him. Really good numbers there. Jelani McDonald was solid for this team, and his reps, 33 total tackles, a tackle for loss, a pick, and pass breakups for him. I like what they return here. A lot of solid assets that they bring back. I think they have some other players that can step up. Kobe Black, I'm highlighting him, potential player that could be a huge breakout younger player on this roster. Warren Robertson as well as a solid asset that could potentially step up and be strong for this team. Derek Williams, not a bad player either. A lot of nice depth here. I like this secondary a lot. The secondary is one of the strongest in the nation. Again, this is a very strong defense with a really strong linebacking core and a very strong secondary.
Yeah, you alluded to a lot of those safeties. Jelani McDonald, he played free safety all year long, but he spent the entire game versus Arizona State in the slot and held up quite well. Was a great run defender at 6'2", 205, so it looks like he'll be permanently in that group. Derek Williams, a guy you alluded to, the other starting safety, is a top 70 recruit. Had a knee injury derail his season, but he was a highly impactful run defender and made big plays in his brief appearances. Had 2 forced turnovers in big games. Xavier Filisami, a 5-star in last year's class. He's going to play backup alongside Jordan Johnson-Rebel. And Wardell Mack was a 4-star in last year's class, who will probably compete in the slot. My favorite guy here, though, was Michael Taft. Showcased high-end football IQ, embraces contact, good ranging coverage, a more than willing run defender. Wasn't the most efficient tackler, but someone they trust in the open field. I think this is the nation's best safety group, Nick. I love the starters, and they have great depth as well. You talk about an embarrassment of riches. I see it here in the safeties.
Very strong safety unit there. You highlighted all those guys. I like that Kobe Black kid at the corner, and then I like Derek Williams. Your 2 underrated pieces in this asset. Derek Williams, I like him a lot in the secondary. I'm expecting a big year out of him.
I look at the verdict for this defense. Elite unit a season ago, and it will remain one of the best, as the only real question mark is who will emerge as the top dogs in the interior. They still have a surplus of big bodies. Linebacking core can be nasty with more in his versatility, and the secondary is going to be as very dominant as the shuffling around. I'm a big fan of, especially with Gillibu moving to a full-time corner role. A+ for me, Nick. This is probably the top defense in college football. We're not done with everybody when it comes to team previews, but I think that Texas, they're going to get an easy top 3 spot.
Yeah, certainly a top 3 unit in the nation. This is certainly, for my money, the best defense in the country. Maybe there's a couple other ones later down that we're going to preview that may be rivaling this, but this is not a team you want to play. This is a team that's going to stuff you, the run against you. They're going to ball hawk, take interceptions against you. They're going to put so much pressure on you over and over again. You're going to hate to play this team. I'm looking at that week 1 matchup. I think it'll be a very low-scoring game in Columbus. I think both defenses are phenomenal, but this Texas defense will, they'll find your vulnerabilities. They'll take advantage of that. This is a phenomenal unit. should be top 10 in all categories this year. They were top 10 in 3 of the categories, and then number 13 against the run. I think the run defense could certainly improve this year as well. I like some of the players they have. This is just a phenomenal defense.
Looking at the final prediction in the schedule for Texas, as dominant as the Horns were last fall, they still could not overcome the hurdle of Georgia, who played pretty poor football for the most part last year. But they made quick work of the Horns for the most part. Even with a backup quarterback, they still beat them in overtime. So Texas still has a lot of work to accomplish, and it's, of course, going to start with Arch Manning trying to uplift this passing attack. Alongside him is a abundance of youth on offense, but sky-high potential. But for them, Nick, they have an A-plus defense in my estimation. I don't think many people are going to be able to crack them all year long, and that's going to allow them to kind of work out some of those growing pains on offense. I think this is a team that's one of the best in the country. They're a lock for the college football playoff. They might even win the conference, but I have them losing at Georgia, and due to my predictions having a certain tiebreaker in there, they don't make it to Atlanta, but they go into the playoffs. And I think they're going to probably have a deep run at Ohio State. I have them losing week 1. The only other tough game really here is going to be at Florida and then Oklahoma, Nick. So for the most part, this is a quite easy schedule. But the 4 opponents I just listed off, they're all going to be in contention, I think, for the playoffs potentially. And that's going to make or break this season, or if this offense indeed struggles and, the defense can't do all the heavy lifting, Texas could finally, they can find themselves in disappointing territory. I don't expect that, though. I think this team, everything's going to work out for them. They'll be in the CFB competing for a natty.
This is a big season for college football royalty down there in Austin. This is a team that's one of the most historic teams in college football, and they have an opportunity to make that history just a little bit sweeter. This team's been in the playoffs back-to-back years. They finally got over the hump with Sarkisian in 2023, winning the Big 12. They lost in the Sugar Bowl. Probably should have won that game against Washington. I think some Texas fans have some nightmares about that. They go back to the playoffs this year after losing in the SEC title game in their first season. They win in round 1 against Clemson. They win in round 2 against Arizona State. They struggle against a good Ohio State team, but they could have won that game. They were still in that game late. I think some Texas fans certainly have some haunting feelings from that. They get a chance at redemption in Columbus. I'm not ready to pull the trigger on that. I think Ohio State will win that game. It will be a lower scoring affair as both teams are trying to feel out their offenses. I look at that game week 2. I know they will win the game against San Jose State, but that's a defense that had some success last year and a defense that has some key pieces returning. So maybe they'll struggle on offense against San Jose State. I think they'll ultimately win that game pretty comfortably, but certainly keep an eye on that one as this offense tries to play out the kinks. There may be a couple turnovers from Arch Manning in that game against San Jose State. After that, I am looking at those 2 games on October 4th and October 11th, right? At Florida, the Swamp is not an easy place to play. This Florida team is very good. The Swamp's a very tough place to play. Certainly maybe it could be a tough matchup there for Texas. Oklahoma, you never know what happens in that rivalry, one of the best rivalries in the sport. I think they're going to beat Georgia. They're going to finally get over the hump and knock Georgia off. I think Georgia's going to lose one of 2 games at home this year, either against Alabama or Texas. I'll pull the trigger on Texas right now. Wouldn't be surprised to lose both, though. This Texas team is the real deal, right? This offense is going to be phenomenal come November when they finally round into full form. Arch Manning, I'm a true believer, been a believer since day one. I think this kid is the real deal, and now he's got a chance to show it. I like that running back room a lot. I think it's a phenomenally deep unit. The offensive line, I trust them in the trenches. Yes, I'm worried about the pass catchers, but it's a slight worry, and I think it's a worry that they will overcome. The defense is just phenomenal. This defense is the best defense in the country. It's a really strong physical unit. This team will have a chance to make something happen this year. It's really, a big boom or bust opportunity for them to go to the national title game, go compete for a national title against something they have not done in a very long time. Big things coming into Austin and high expectations. Can this team meet them? Only time will tell.
That's going to be it for today's episode. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.